going to unbox and use this set of watercolors that I just got in from Grabie. It's 100 all-in-one watercolor set. It says it's 100 vibrant colors, highly pigmented, highly saturated, portable, and easy to carry, 100% non-toxic, and this is their premium set. So let's see, it comes with 50 essential colors, 35 metallic, 10 pastel, 5 fluorescent, a paper pad with a swatch sheet, includes a bonus water brush, and includes a waterproof fine liner. So set the box aside, and I opened it up, and this is what was inside that box. Now this cold press pad came wrapped in plastic. I've already removed the plastic, and so here we are with what looks to be the swatch sheets. So I'm going to take those out if we can, because we want to work with them. I will say that the glue on the pad is very strong, holding that in place. And then we have what looks to be, plain watercolor paper after that. So no designs on this one. It's 10 sheets, and it's 140-pound cold press. So this is what the swatch sheets look like. It's a two-sheeter to get all 100 colors in. So that's what they look like, and they are named. So let's open up the box and see what the box looks like. So it is a metal box, and I had it upside down there. It is embossed with the word Grabie on it. It has this nice metal clasp, and when we open it up, kind of goes like so. All right, so the first thing is it has the protector sheets over it, and the protector sheets have the names. All right, and thankfully the swatch sheets align with the way the colors are in the palette. So that is helpful since we don't have the names here. All right, so we're going to take these sheets off. They have a little tab that hook into the side. I don't know. I'm going to hang on to them to see if they're useful, but I doubt that we'll be using them that much in the future. Looking at here, okay, I've got Perla, Stardust, Diamond White, and then I've got a white down here at the bottom. So I don't know, I may have reorganized these in a different way than what they presented, but this is the way the colors come. So let's see what's in this pack. It says water brush pen set of 3 and waterproof fine line drawing pen. All right, so 4 things. Yep. So we've got a multi-liner, and let's just take a look at that. Is a very fine point, and we'll just, you can see that that's a fine point, and I put that on the coated, and so you're gonna have to give it a little bit to dry. That was coated paper, so you can see just a slight smear, but once dry it will work well. And then we've got 3 brushes, which I want to take the lids off of them because I want to show you their brushes. 3 very different brushes. All right, so we've got a smaller one. The bristles are a little bit separated there. We've got a flat, and then another one, just like the first, different size. All right, so then, I don't know if the caps are different sizes, but let's just put these back on and give it a wonder if that, okay, they fit. So they fit back in that tray, and then this becomes portable. Of course, you have to fold up from the bottom to put that. These are loose in here, I will say. So, I don't know. It seems pretty tight, but this plastic tray could come out. So my next thing to do is to swatch all these colors onto the swatch sheets and then come back and show you what they all look like. So I'm going to do that off camera. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about what's in front of me here. Now, with 100 colors, what's really nice about 100 colors, especially if you're starting out in watercolor, is that you tend not to have to mix to get a different color. With 100 colors, you can do a lot of things, especially going like here. If we look at the blues, we've got a light, a medium, and a darker blue, and then of course we can go into even darker here. Now they may not all be the same hue, but they are in the same color family, so you could get away without having to ever mix in black or white or gray. If you wanted to mix, do you have a palette? No, but you could use this area here that you're storing your pens in to mix your colors if you wanted to, but I like the idea that as a starter set and for beginners, that you really don't need to mix many colors to get started, because you have quite a variety here, and I think you'll be able to find a lot that you can work with. The other thing I like about having the swatch sheet, which I would maybe trim down a little bit and leave it, unfortunately you can see here it's just a little bit bigger than the case itself, but what I would do is trim it down where I could so that it fits in on top of the colors, because what would be nice about this is if you're looking to paint a picture, and let's say you have the picture in front of you, I'm just going to grab the pad here at Grabie, and you want to match this purple, you could take your color chart to it and go, okay, this one here is a pretty equal color to that, so you find it on your palette and then you go ahead and use it. So I think swatching gives you a really good idea of what the colors look like, and then also to be able to use them for matching. I would not rely on these, although they may be similar and they may, you know, work out to be somewhat similar. I really like seeing the actual paint itself. So I am going to swatch and then come back and give you my impression of how they work. So I have set up to start swatching these, and the first things I'm going to start out with are the whites, and I'm going to use the brushes that came with the Grabie set to see how well they work. And then off to the side here I do have a bucket of water and also a paper towel. So to start off with the top set of colors, I went ahead and sprayed it with water. So if you're starting out, that is something you may want to do, and I went ahead and got my pens and brushes wet as well, so let's move those out of the way. So I sprayed these with water, my brush is wet, and now I can go in and work the top of the paint. I don't think I'm even in frame for you here. So I'm going to work the top of my paint until I see that I'm actually picking something up, and that's going to be hard to see with the white, but I can see on my brush that there actually is color there, and I am going to then paint it into the swatch space here. I know a lot of people like to swatch their color just the half and then add water to see how it blends out, and that might be an option with some of the other colors. With these light colors, I'm not particularly seeing the need for that yet, but I may find it. I am already starting to see that this water brush, the hairs on it, they're synthetic, that they are spreading, and so I may rather quickly here switch out to a little bit better of a brush, but I'm going to keep going and see how this works for us. And I do have one paint there that's this perla color that's a little bit loose in its space, that while I'm waving on top of it, it is jiggling, and I know when I first opened up the packet it actually came out. So there are some subtle differences there in those light colors at the top. And so now I'm going to go ahead, since I've explained to you what I'm doing here, I'm going to go ahead and pause you and then go ahead and fill out the rest of the chart. Alright, so my swatches are done, and it was rather quick. So this first page, the first set, I don't know if it's showing in camera, but it is rather metallic, and so when I move it I can see the mica in all of those colors. And then here is the bottom tray, and there are all of those colors. As I started to paint, some of the colors I had more water in them than others. And just to show you, one I can point out for sure is this red right here was very wet, and it is still very pigmented. So the other thing I noticed is that when I go to pick up the paint, now I sprayed the paints with water, and then my brush was wet, and I did not have water in my water brush. I'm just using with a container off to the side. I'm dipping it and cleaning it in the water. I'm wiping it off on a paper towel, and then I'm going into the color. And when I touch the color, I am quickly picking up pigment. When I touch it to the surface, it's almost gummy or like a wet paint consistency instead of a dry paint. So it doesn't take long to pick up pigment. And if you can see, my brush is stained, but let me see if I can get it to focus in a little bit better. You can see how the color is on the end. That's about the amount of pigment I was picking up just by touching and barely working the surface to get the color. And it came onto the brush very quickly. And then painting the small swatch, you can see that the colors are very, very vivid and very intense and not so light because they're mixed with water. The other thing I want to point out is probably the only downside that I see right now, given what I've done so far, is that the order of the colors are not the order I would have put them in. You know, there's like, we've got some yellow here, some yellow family here, a fluorescent, and then one down here that's pastel all by itself. So I know that they're putting the pastels together here on this end, but I almost would like the series of colors to be together for the most part. So we've got this series of green going on here, and then we've got two that are down here off by themselves, and then we've got the fluorescent one and the pastel one down here. I'd like to see them all together, and if I were arranging this paint set, that is how I would put them together. But other than that, I am happy with how they've performed so far. I am not a professional watercolor artist, and so I don't know how someone with that talent would feel about these colors, but given the other watercolors that I have worked with, these are performing very well. So now it is to go see, you know, how we can actually paint with them. And I know some of them I did paint over the black lines, and in some cases they're doing more of a cover up, probably in the metallics, than they are in the colors down here themselves. But I think if I were probably to paint with them, I might swatch out my paint brushes. I think these might be nice to travel with and just, you know, to have as a quick use. This one was bothering me quite a bit on this first page, and then I realized that there was a kind of a hair sticking out, and I went in and trimmed it, and so it performed much better down here. The one thing I did like about the white bristle is that I could see it was picking up the pigment right away. So that was a nice thing to be able to see. But I think if I were to paint a painting, I don't know about the water brushes. I may have to give them, you know, more of a try to be more honest about how they work. But I can see that I would really like to work with some higher quality paintbrushes with the quality of the paint that I am seeing here. I have stamped this flower image from Penny Black, and I really liked being able to use this as an example because I can die cut it out later. And what I have going on here is I have stamped it and let it dry. It's a little bit fuzzy. I had to stamp it twice, and it didn't line up perfectly for me. But I do want to go in and show you a fun technique that using the watercolor, the Grabie Watercolor, what I'm going to do is just put some water down onto the petals. All right, I'm not touching the leaves, I'm just touching the flower. And now I have stamped with a permanent ink, so it's not going to move when I go to put color on. I'm going to start with a lighter color, and so I am going to go into raspberry. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I'm grabbing some raspberry, and you can see how fast the pigment gets picked up on the brush, and I'm going to just touch it into the water, and you can see how it already starts to spread out into those areas. And so I'm going to kind of just put a light coating here, go back into my water, because I want to work with the water to get it to travel out to the outer edges of my petals here, and I want it to be lighter towards the outside and darker in the center. So I will be coming back in with another color. But if you're beginning with watercolor, this is a really fun way to work, because you can stamp your image. You don't have to worry about drawing. You could just stamp an image, go in, do a little bit of watercolor, do a little bit of color blending. And here I'm just using one color, and you can already see how it's a little bit darker in the center. But now I'm going to come in with a darker color, and I am just going to add it on top of this while it is wet. And so these colors can kind of start to work together. I'm just going in where they're touching the petal in front of it. And so you can see I'm just putting down a little bit of a darker color along that edge. And then I can go into it with just some water. I'm rinsing off my brush a little bit. And now I can work to blend into that darker color that I've put down. And so this one right here is really kind of getting where I want it to go. So once again, I'm pick up a little bit of dark and go into the overlap areas. And once again, I'm still working wet on wet. All right. And so I want there to be a little bit of shadow where the flowers overlap. And as the leaves or the petals get out to the outside, I want them to be a little bit lighter in color. And in fact, I can go in with water and lighten up those leaves as well. And then if I want to grab a little bit darker color, I can just go a little bit darker in the center area here. And then with my water, rinse my brush off. I'm going to go in here and just blend this out a little bit so it's not splotchy, but that it actually kind of washes together. It doesn't take much to do a really nice watercolor application onto a stamped image. All right, and so now I can go in with my green, and I'm just going to do the same technique. I'm going to wet those leaves. I'm going to go in and grab a light green. I'm just going to go with the green itself, I guess. And let's go ahead and touch that leaf. And I'm just going to touch into the base. And then I'm going to go pick up water. And with the water, I'm going to bring that color out to the leaf. So wetting these over here. Have a little bit of green on my brush, and that's okay. And the paper I'm working on is the watercolor paper that came with the paints themselves. All right, so I'm going to go in and touch the dark into this bottom of the leaves. Rinse off. And then come back in with water and pull that color out. So there I'm getting a variety of tone with just one color. We can let this dry. You can come back into it and paint again on top of it. You can add more color if you want. I think I'm going to go ahead and let this dry, and let's see what our colors look like. But I think for the most part that is pretty nice. I may want to come in with like a little bit of a peachy color along the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and dry this, and then we'll come back and take a look. All right, so here we are dry, and the thing I like about stamping with a die that fits it is that I really don't have to even worry about the overlay of color, because we're going to die cut it out, and we won't see that overshot of color. So I'm going to go in, I think, with some orange. Yeah, let's grab some orange. I'm going to put it on my glass mat here because that is a pretty intense color. And I'm going to grab some white to tone it down. And the white will also make it a little bit more opaque. And I'm really working the white because I hadn't sprayed it ahead of time. All right, so that is now giving me more of the tonal color I want. And I'm going to go around the edges here and just add in a hint of more color along the edges. And maybe not even on all of them, but just some. So it's just a really subtle touch of color to the outer edges. And you know, once I've got this colored in, the error in stamping doesn't really bother me as much. I'm more interested in the color. And I really like the blending of this kind of watered and lightened orange color along the edge, and that's really now adding some detail to this flower. Now with watercolor, as you work, if you have too much of anything and it's still wet, you can go in with a paper towel and dab a little and pick up some of that color. So that's a really nice effect as well. I'm going to go in here and get the center of that flower. I don't know if I want it lighter like that, or if I want to go in there and make it darker. Let me grab a really dark red and see. I don't really want it to be as wet as I am here. I really want to be able to just touch in some dark into that center. And I'm just working the tip of my brush to get that kind of center in there. Kind of where the stamen is. All right, and so I'm going to let this dry again, and I think we're going to call this quits, but if I bring this up to you, hopefully you can then see how those colors work together and blend together, and that's still a little wet, but I'm going to let that dry, and then we can die cut it and use it in our future crafting. So what I'm seeing here with the Grabie watercolor is that you can see that I really didn't mix any colors. I added a little white to the orange just to tone it down a fair amount. And that's really all I needed to do. And then like with the green, I just took the green and added water to get a tonal change in the leaves. And so that's working really nice as well. I used 2 colors of red on the flowers, and then of course a darker one in the center. But there's enough color here that you really don't have to do color mixing unless you like to play with the colors and you like to mix the colors. I tend to do a lot of work in color theory, and so mixing colors speaks to me, and it may not speak to you beginning out to start with a set of watercolors. The other thing I want to point out to you is that I went ahead and cut down my color chart, and I rounded the corners, and it fits. I know I'm not completely in screen here, but let's see if I can get it in here without getting into the paint. Anyway, what I want to show you is that it fits perfectly in here, and so now I can keep it with it. The other thing I like about it is that as I was working, I had this standing up, the top kind of standing up at an angle, because everything on the top part is metallic, and I wasn't going to use any of the metallics, so I could put my color chart right up there. I could see it, so I can see what these colors here are actually going to look like when I go to paint with them. And so that was really nice too, because like, look how dark this cadmium green is here. It looks almost black next to that yellow, but up here it's a really beautiful green color. So that was nice too, to be able to put this in a way that I could see my color chart, see my paints in front of me, and go in and grab whatever color I wanted to use for my flower.